Well, I have to tell you, I have tried in every way I know how, literally from my years as a young lawyer all the way through my time as Secretary of State, to level with the American people.
You talk about leveling with the American people. Have you always told the truth?
I've always tried to. Always. Always.
Some people are going to call that wiggle room that you just gave yourself.
Well, no,
always.
You know, you're asking me to say, have I ever? I don't believe I ever have. I don't believe I ever have. I don't believe I ever will.
How do you answer that charge that Senator Sanders has made that you're in the pocket of Wall Street or beholden to their interests?
Well, look, anybody who knows me knows I'm not in the pocket of anyone, and anyone who thinks they can influence me certainly doesn't know me.
So here are some of the recent donors to the Clinton Initiative: United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Australia, Germany, and not just Canada, but the Canadian government agency promoting the Keystone XL pipeline. Yeah, I wonder why they'd want to give to Hillary Clinton, who might be the next president of the United States. Interesting. Well, in fact, let's go to that. Wall Street Journal explains one of the 2014 donations comes from a Canadian agency promoting the proposed Keystone pipeline, which is favored by Republicans and under review by the Obama administration. The Foreign Affairs, Trade and Development Agency of Canada, a first-time donor, gave between $250,000 and $500,000. The donations are given in ranges, but we know through another public appearance that the number is $480,000. So they've never given to the Clinton Foundation before. She might be the next president of the United States. They just happen to write a $480,000 check for the first time, just in case she might be able to have a decision-making power over Keystone XL pipeline. Now, anybody think this might be, at the very least, the appearance of corruption? The United Arab Emirates, a first-time donor, gave between $1 million and $5 million in 2014. A previous donor, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, has given between $10 million and $25 million since the foundation was created in 1999. Part of that came in 2014, although the database doesn't specify how much. Now, if Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates and these other Gulf countries were that interested in the human rights and welfare and health care, et cetera, all the different things that the Clinton Global Foundation is pushing, they could have showed it in other ways. If I'm Hillary Clinton, I go to Saudi Arabia and I say, hey, you know what? Keep your $25 million, let women drive, and we'll call it a deal.
The New York Times expose on the Clinton Foundation details moral and fiscal chaos, shameless fundraising, and calls it mired in conflicts of interest. Run by old Clinton friends, it has been grossly mismanaged and, despite enormous donations, ran multi-million-dollar deficits. Secretary of State Clinton traveled to Moscow and pressed the Russian government to purchase planes from Boeing. 2 months later, contract in hand, Boeing donated $900,000 to the Clinton Foundation. The foundation's support from foreign interests hoping to influence U.S. policy is of grave concern. Foreign donations to the foundation increased by 70% when Hillary Clinton ran for president in 2008. Saudi Arabia has financed terrorists, has an abysmal women's rights record, and punishes homosexuality by death. And yet, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is one of the largest supporters of the Clinton Foundation.
They brought in some new multi-billionaires to pump the money in. They want to rig the economy so they continue to get richer and richer. They could care less about income inequality. They solve their consciences by giving big money to philanthropy and, getting great pictures of them standing in front of whatever charity they donated to. There is no doubt about what they're doing and who the players are and what they're trying to achieve. And, they're shopping among the Republican candidates to figure out who among them will most likely do their bidding.
A third of the money that went into the campaigns was never disclosed. You have no idea. It could be a foreign government. It could be a criminal cartel. It could be a drug cartel. You don't know. This is cancerous. This is so pernicious and corrupting of our political system.
The people who really know what needs to be done know that I'm the person who can deliver to make sure that we don't end up with the kind of problems we faced back in 2008.
You have received a lot of support from people who made their money on Wall Street. Mm-hmm. You have a lot of Wall Street relationships. You've done paid speeches for Wall Street institutions, 3 paid speeches for Goldman Sachs alone, your first year out of public office, for which they paid you over $600,000. What do you say to people like Senator Sanders, who have criticized you as basically being too close to that most powerful special interest, too close to Wall Street interest to be trusted to reel them in when they need to be reeled in?
Anybody who thinks that they can influence what I will do doesn't know me very well, and they can actually look and see what I have said and done throughout my career. Yes, you do need a president who will be forthright and absolutely call them out, everybody, wherever they are, for what they're doing that tilts the balance away from voters and citizens. But voters and citizens have to help me do that. And here's what I mean by that. We got to get people to turn out and vote. If we were not electing the leaders who are promoting these policies, I have always listened to people.
We got a number of questions, even from people who support your policies, who say they do believe that you represent the interests of Wall Street and corporate America. How do you respond?
Well, look, that's just not the case. I'm
asking you.
Yeah, there was no doubt that I took on a lot of what was going down on Wall Street. I honestly think that the best answer to this is the fact that everybody that I know who looks at what's happening in this campaign sees the same thing. The Wall Street interests, the money interests, the Republican political interests are spending a lot of money to try to defeat me. I just find it kind of a strange argument.
And it's about this issue of the speeches, particularly to Goldman Sachs. This is what the questioner wrote verbatim. I am concerned with the abuses of Wall Street has taken with the American taxpayers' money. And then she asked whether you would release the transcripts of your Goldman Sachs speeches, and then added, don't you think the voting public has a right to know what was said? But let's make that bigger. Are you willing to release the transcripts of all your paid speeches? We do know through reporting that there were transcription services for all of those paid speeches. In full disclosure, would you release all of them?
I will look into it. I don't know the status, but I will certainly look into it. I have always listened to people, but I can only repeat what is the fact, that I spoke to a lot of different groups with a lot of different constituents, a lot of different kinds of members.
You made 3 speeches for Goldman Sachs. You were paid $675,000 for 3 speeches. Was that a mistake? I mean, was that a bad error in judgment?
Look, I made speeches to lots of groups. I told them what I thought. I answered questions.
But did you have to be paid $675,000?
Well, I don't know. That's what they offered. So, you know, every Secretary of State that I know has done that.
But that's usually once they're office and not running for an office again.
Well, I didn't know.
You must have known.
To be honest, I wasn't committed to running. I didn't know whether I would or not.
You didn't think you were going to run for president again?
I didn't. You know, when I was Secretary of State, several times I said, you know, I think I'm done. And, you know, so many people came to me, started talking to me. The circumstances, the concerns I had about the Republicans taking back the White House, because I think they wrecked what we achieved in the 90s with 23 million new jobs and incomes going up for everybody. I did not want to see that happen again. I want to defend President Obama's accomplishments and the progress we've made. I want to go further. So, yeah, I was convinced. Well, I didn't know.
Must have known.
To be honest, I wasn't committed to running. But, you know, anybody who knows me, who thinks that they can influence me, name anything they've influenced me on. Just name one thing. I'm out here every day saying I'm going to shut them down. I'm going after them. I'm going to jail them if they should be jailed. I'm going to break them up. I mean, they're not giving me very much money now, I can tell you that much. Fine with me. Look at my record. Look at my record. Now, if all we're going to talk about is one part of our economy, and indeed one street in our economy, we're missing the big oil companies, we're missing other big energy companies, we're missing the big picture. And I have a record of trying to go at the problems that actually exist. Senator Sanders is the only person who I think would characterize me, a woman running to be the first woman president, as exemplifying the establishment. And I've got to tell you that It is really it's really quite amusing.
I represented Wall Street as a senator from New York, and I went to Wall Street in December of 2007, before the big crash that we had, and I basically said, cut it out. Quit foreclosing on homes. Quit engaging in these kinds of speculative behaviors.
Now, who's exactly to blame for the housing crisis? I think there's plenty of blame to go around. Home buyers who paid extra fees to avoid documenting their income should have known they were getting in over their head.
You are not for Glass-Steagall. You are not for putting a firewall between this speculative, risky, shadow banking behavior. I am. And the people of our country need a president who's on their side, willing to protect the Main Street economy from recklessness on Wall Street.
Of course, we have to deal with the problem that the banks are still too big to fail. We can never let the American taxpayer and middle-class families ever have to bail out the kind of speculative behavior that we saw. But we also have to worry about some of the other players. AIG, a big insurance company, Lehman Brothers, an investment bank. There's this whole area called shadow banking. That's where the experts tell me the next potential problem could come from. So I'm with both Senator Sanders and Governor O'Malley in putting a lot of attention onto the banks. And the plan that I have put forward would actually empower regulators to break up big banks. I represented New York, and I represented New York on 9/11. When we were attacked, where were we attacked? We were attacked in downtown Manhattan, where Wall Street is. I did spend a whole lot of time and effort helping them rebuild. That was good for New York, it was good for the economy, and it was a way to rebuke the terrorists who had attacked our country.
There are lots of reasons why Americans today are feeling left out and left behind. Yes, of course, the economy has not been working for most Americans. Yes, of course, we have special interests that are unfortunately doing too much to rig the game. I want to imagine a country where people's wages reflect their hard work. They want to go after any economic interests that they don't believe they can control. They want to destroy our balance of power. They want to go after our political system and fill it with people who will do their bidding.
My question is, a number of factors, some you've just described, have eroded trust in you. What will you do to regain that trust, engender trust in Americans and me?
Well, thank you for starting by saying it's related to what I just said. And I acknowledge this as personally painful as it is. When you have been subjected to the level, the velocity of attacks that come every day, even if there is no factual basis to it, it's just normal for people to say, gosh, there's got to be something. Why do they keep saying this? And then we do that.
I'm asking you.
The numbers just don't add up.
Yeah. You were against same-sex marriage. Now you're for it. You defended President Obama's immigration policies. Now you say they're too harsh. You supported his trade deal dozens of times. You even called it the gold standard. Now, suddenly last week, you're against it. Will you say anything to get elected?
Well, actually, I have been very consistent over the course of my entire life. I have always fought for the same values and principles.
Do you think New York State should recognize gay marriage?
No.
No. Okay.
I believe that marriage is not just a bond, but a sacred bond between a man and a woman.
I have not supported same-sex marriage. I have supported civil partnerships and contractual relationships.
I support marriage for lesbian and gay couples. I support it personally and as a matter of policy and law.
When you're talking about, if I look at all the other candidates, someone who is for rights across the board, equal rights for women, equal rights for every ethnicity, equal rights for everyone, it is the only person I can look at is you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Well,
You're saying your opinion on gay marriage changed, or you changed your mind.
I have to say, I think you are being very persistent, but you are playing with my words and playing with what is such an important issue.
I'm just trying to clarify so I can understand.
No, I don't think you are trying to clarify. I think you're trying to say that, I used to be opposed and now I'm in favor and I did it for political reasons, and that's just flat wrong. So let me just state what I feel like you are implying and repudiate it. I have a strong record. I have a great commitment to this issue, and I am proud of what I've done and the progress we're making.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just want to clarify what I was saying. No, I was saying that you maybe really believed this all along, but, believed in gay marriage all along, but felt for political reasons America wasn't ready yet and you couldn't say it. That's what I was thinking.
No, that is not true.
It really is great how long you've supported gay marriage.
Yes. I could have supported it sooner.
Well, you did it pretty soon.
Could have been sooner.
Fair point.
We are making progress toward finalizing a far-reaching new trade agreement called the Trans-Pacific Partnership. The so-called TPP will lower barriers, raise standards, and drive long-term growth across the region.
The United States is engaging in the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade negotiations.
We're pursuing a regional agreement with the nations of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. We are also pressing ahead with negotiations for the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
We are very committed to the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
We're excited about the innovative trade agreement called the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Your husband received $800,000 for speaking engagements, ostensibly in support of the trade deal, or by a group that supports the trade deal. You've given your own money to your campaign. Is that a conflict of interest?
I mean, and how many angels dance on the head of a pin? I have really nothing to, how do you answer that?
It was one of the highlights of President Clinton's first term, passage of the North American Free Trade Agreement, also known as NAFTA. Critics blame NAFTA for the loss of manufacturing jobs in industrial states, including Ohio and Pennsylvania. Hillary Clinton helped get NAFTA approved. She held at least 5 meetings to strategize about how to win congressional approval. She helped the White House block opposition from labor and environmental groups, and she was the featured speaker at a crucial meeting. Participants in that event said, quote, her remarks were totally pro-NAFTA. There was no equivocation for her support for NAFTA at the time.
I have been a critic of NAFTA from the very beginning.
My concerns about NAFTA expressed years ago have been well documented and verified.
I didn't have a public position on it.
I have spoken consistently against NAFTA.
And if you look at what I have been saying, it has been consistent.
I have been consistent.
You can go back and look at from the very beginning.
I was one of the voices in the administration warning about NAFTA.
You said it was good on balance for New York and America in 2004, and now you're in Ohio, and your words are much different, Senator. The record is very clear.
Well, you don't have all the record, because you can go back and look at what I've said consistently.
Oh, I think that everybody is in favor of free and fair trade, and I think that NAFTA is proving its worth.
Was NAFTA a mistake?
NAFTA was a mistake to the extent that it did not deliver on what we had hoped it would.
Your opponents are saying that that's really part of a larger pattern with you, that you often avoid taking firm positions on controversial issues.
And I am, adamantly against illegal immigrants. I made this exception basically on humanitarian grounds because of the individual stories. But certainly we've got to do more at our borders, and people have to stop employing illegal immigrants. Come up to Westchester, go to Suffolk and Nassau counties, stand in the street corners in Brooklyn or the Bronx. You're going to see loads of people waiting to get picked up to go do yard work and construction work and domestic work.
The people who are here, who are raising families and working hard and contributing to our country, deserve a path to citizenship. I have believed that for many years. I have argued that in many different contexts.
When asked whether she supports a proposal by the New York State governor to issue driver's licenses to illegal immigrants,
I certainly recognize why Governor Spitzer is trying to do it.
first she said this.
It makes a lot of sense. What is the governor supposed to do?
5 seconds later,
Do I think this is the best thing for any governor to do? No.
Unless I missed something, Senator Clinton said 2 different things in the course of about 2 minutes.
I can't tell whether she was for it or against it.
Just in July, New Hampshire, you told the crowd you, quote, take a backseat to no one when it comes to progressive values.
I take a backseat to no one when you look at my record and standing up and fighting for progressive values.
Last month in Ohio, you said you plead guilty to, quote, being kind of moderate and center. Do you change your political identity based on who you're talking to?
No, I think that, like most people that I know, I have a range of views, but they are rooted in my values and my experience.
I get accused of being kind of moderate and center.
I plead guilty.
Just for the record, are you a progressive or are you a moderate?
I'm a progressive.
Going through the emails, there were over 60,000 in total sent and received. About half were work-related and went to the State Department, and about half were personal that were not in any way related to my work.
When you speak to the public, you say, I turned over everything. That's, for the most part, a direct quote. When you talk to the public, you say, I turned over everything.
90 to 95% of my work-related emails were in the state system. If they wanted to see them, they would certainly have been able to do so.
You know what? That is maybe the 10th time you have cited that figure today.
It is.
And I have not heard anyone other than you ever cite that figure. Who told you that 90 to 95% of your emails were in the State Department system? Who told you that?
We learned that from the State Department and their analysis of the emails that were already on the system.
The Inspector General report found that less than 1% of State Department emails, record emails, were captured. So they give a number of less than 1%, and you give a number of 90%.
I have absolute confidence that everything that could be in any way connected to work is now in the possession of the State Department.
This pile represents the emails that you sent or received about Libya in 2011, from February through December of 2011. This pile represents the emails you sent or received from early 2012 until the day of the attack. There are 795 emails in this pile. We've counted them. There are 67 emails in this pile in 2012. And I'm troubled by what I see. I can only conclude by your own records that there was a lack of interest in Libya in 2012.
The server contains personal communications from my husband and me.
Only time I got on the internet, I did 2 emails, and I ordered Christmas presents from a reservation. Otherwise, I found people said embarrassing things on emails. I didn't want to be one of them.
Democratic voters that our reporters have been running into in Iowa and New Hampshire, they tell our reporters over and over again they're worried about the emails issue. Not because they don't believe your explanation, but because it's a drip, because the cloud is hanging over your head and that it will impact the general election. They see your numbers right now and they think it's the email issue as to why you're not polling very well. So can you reassure these Democrats that somehow the email issue isn't going to blow up your candidacy if you're the nominee?
Absolutely, I can. You know, before it was emails, it was Benghazi. And the Republicans were stirring up so much controversy about that. And I testified for 11 hours, answered their questions. They basically said, yep, didn't get her, we tried. That was all a political ploy.
I didn't mention a video because there was never a video-inspired protest in Benghazi. There was in Cairo, but not in Benghazi. Victoria Nuland, your spokesperson at the State Department, hours after the attack said this: Benghazi has been attacked by militants. In Cairo, police have removed demonstrators. Benghazi, you got weapons and explosions. Cairo, you got spray paint and rocks. 1 hour before the attack in Benghazi, Chris Stevens walks the diplomat to the front gate. The ambassador didn't report a demonstration. He didn't report it because it never happened. An eyewitness in the command center that night on the ground said no protest, no demonstration. 2 intelligence reports that day. No protest, no demonstration. But the best evidence is Greg Hicks, the #2 guy in Libya, the guy who worked side by side with Ambassador Stevens. He was asked if there had been a protest, would the ambassador have reported it? Mr. Hicks' response? Absolutely. Where'd the false narrative start? Started with you, Madam Secretary. At 10:08, on the night of the attack, you released this statement. Some have sought to justify the vicious behavior as a response to inflammatory material posted on the internet. At 10:08, with no evidence, at 10:08, before the attack is over, at 10:08, when Tyrone Woods and Glenn Doherty are still on the roof of the annex fighting for their lives, the official statement of the State Department blames a video. Approximately 1 hour after you told the American people it was a video, you say to your family, 2 officers were killed today in Benghazi by an al-Qaeda-like group. You tell the American people one thing, you tell your family an entirely different story. We know, not we think, not it might be, we know the attack in Libya had nothing to do with the film. It was a planned attack, not a protest. State Department experts knew the truth. You knew the truth. But that's not what the American people got.
You know, I testify for 11 hours. There's nothing to Benghazi. They don't give it up. They keep coming after it.
It's relevant because our ambassador was asked to read and respond to Sidney Blumenthal's drivel. It was sent to him to read and react to. In some instances, on the very same day he was asking for security. So I think it is eminently fair to ask why Sidney Blumenthal had unfettered access to you, Madam Secretary, with whatever he wanted to talk about, and there's not a single solitary email to or from you to or from Ambassador Stevens. I'm not going to release one transcript of someone who knows nothing about Libya by his own admission, while people who risk their lives, you have no interest in their story getting out. You don't want the 18 DS agents, you don't want the CIA agents. The only transcripts you want released are Ms. Mills and Sidney Blumenthal.
People have accused Ambassador Rice and the administration of, misleading Americans. I can say, trying to be in the middle of this and understanding what was going on, nothing could be further from the truth.
Can you tell me why Chris Stevens was in Benghazi the night that he was killed? Do you know? Does it bother you whether or not you know why Chris Stevens was in Benghazi? Do you know why we were the last flag flying in Benghazi after the British had left and the Red Cross had been bombed? Do you know why requests for additional security were denied? Do you know why an ambassador asking for more security days and weeks before he was murdered and those requests went unheeded? Do you know the answer to why those requests went unheeded?
We were misled that there was supposedly protests and then something sprang out of that, an assault sprang out of that. And that was easily ascertained that was not the fact. And the American people could have known that within days, and they didn't know that.
With all due respect, the fact is we had 4 dead Americans. Was it because of a protest, or was it because of guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans? What difference at this point does it make?
I have absolutely no concerns about it whatsoever. If there's going to be a security review about me, there's going to have to be security reviews about a lot of other people, including Republican office holders, because we've got this absurd situation of retroactive classifications.
You say Secretary Clinton should be disqualified from the presidency because she voted in favor of using force in Iraq. She has since said that her vote was a mistake. Why isn't that good enough?
We just heard Senator Sanders say that it's the worst decision in American history. That's very significant. The worst decision in American history. I just heard from Senator Sanders. So as we look ahead, if you're going to make those poor judgment calls at a critical time in our history, we just finished with the Vietnam era, getting back into another quagmire. If you're looking ahead, and you're looking at someone that made that poor decision in 2002 to go into Iraq when there was no real evidence of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. I know, because I did my homework. And so that's an indication of how someone will perform in the future, and that's what's important.
This is probably the hardest decision I've ever had to make. Any vote that might lead to war should be hard. But I cast it with conviction.
I don't think it can be either or. Now, I voted for the Iraqi resolution, and it was a very difficult vote for me. Why
don't you, straight. Good.
In the 4 years since the inspectors left, Saddam Hussein has worked to rebuild his chemical and biological weapons stock, his missile delivery capability, and his nuclear program. He has also given aid, comfort, and sanctuary to terrorists. It is clear, however, that if left unchecked, Saddam Hussein will continue to increase his capacity to wage biological and chemical warfare and will keep trying to develop nuclear weapons.
When the United States takes a position, we're doing it on the basis of very convincing evidence.
Do you believe we could have disarmament without regime change?
I doubt it. I can support the president. I can support an action against Saddam Hussein because I think it's in the long-term interests of our national security. I was one who supported giving President Bush the authority, if necessary, to use force against Saddam Hussein. If I had been president in October of 2002, I would have never asked for authority to divert our attention from Afghanistan to Iraq, and I certainly would never have started this war.
Look, I know that there have been a lot of questions about Iraq posed to candidates over the last weeks. I've made it very clear that I made a mistake, plain and simple.
Well, I think that the laws that were passed, again, post 9/11, gave very broad authority. And that authority was passed by the Congress, and it was endorsed by executives in 2 administrations, both Bush and Obama. He violated American law. He violated his duties that he assumed when he took the job that he had. And if he is as proud of or as secure in his belief that what he did was the right thing, he should come home and defend it.
Hillary Clinton supported the first war in Iraq. She supported the war in Libya, the war in Syria, and she's supporting a no-fly zone. Sounds like Hillary Clinton. Hawk? I think Hillary Clinton is a neocon. I think she's. I think Hillary Clinton's a neoconservative.
I see her and Rubio as being the same person. They both want a no-fly zone. They both have supported activity in Libya. The war in Libya that toppled Gaddafi, an intervention that made us less safe. They both have supported pouring arms into the Syrian civil war, a mistake that I think allowed ISIS to grow stronger. And they both have supported the Iraq war. So, I mean, what's the difference?
They're told, don't you dare say climate change is real, because we're the fossil fuel business.
You've also said that you support renewable energy in our country, but have taken over $150,000 from the big oil and gas industries. These are industries which are in direct conflict with your interest in renewable energies. And I'm wondering if you'd be willing to take one step further away from the Republicans and take a stand against any more campaign contributions from them.
Yeah, I don't even know what you're referring to, but Big Oil knows I'm not their friend, so I can't imagine they must have put it in the wrong envelope. Very clear about that. You know, I will certainly take a hard look at that. It is not something that I've paid any attention to because they know where I stand and they know what I will do.
I'd like to know if you'd be willing to sign a pledge that you will not take money from the fossil fuel industry, that you'll stop immediately.
Well, I don't know that I ever have. I'm not exactly one of their favorites.
You have.
Well, I'll check on that. They certainly haven't made much of an impression on me if I don't even know it. Everybody knows where I stand. And everybody knows when I was in the Senate, I voted that way. I voted against the big energy giveaway bill in 2005. I'm on record. Well, I'm going to take a look and see what I mean, you're asking me a question I never paid attention to because they don't actually come and talk to me.
I have always listened to people.
As president, would you sign a bill, yes or no, please, in favor of allowing the Keystone XL pipeline?
Well, this is President Obama's decision. And I am not going to second guess him because I was in a position to set this in motion, and I do not think that would be the right thing to do. So I want to wait and see what he and Secretary Kerry decide. If it's undecided when I become president, I will answer your question.
Right before this debate, Secretary Clinton's campaign put out a lot of reversals on positions on Keystone and many other things.
I never took a position on Keystone until I took a position on Keystone.
Another international issue that you signed in on last year was the Alberta Clipper, a pipeline from Alberta that brings tar sands, oil sands, directly into Wisconsin to the U.S. Midwest. This is some of the dirtiest fuel in the world. And how can the U.S. be saying climate change is a priority when we're mainlining some of the dirtiest fuel that exists?
Well, there hasn't been a final decision made.
Are you willing to reconsider it?
Probably not.
And you know, but we haven't finished all of the analysis. So as I say, we've not yet signed off on it, but we are inclined to do so, and we are for several reasons. Going back to one of your original questions, we're either going to be dependent on dirty oil from the Gulf or dependent on dirty oil from Canada.
I genuinely want to know what in your heart has changed that's going to change the direction of this country. Like what in you, like not your platform, not what you're supposed to say. Like how do you actually feel that's different than you did before? Like what were the mistakes? And how can those mistakes that you made be lessons for all of America for a moment of reflection on how we treat black people in this country?
Obviously, I know more about the civil rights movement in the old days because I had a lot of involvement in working with people. So they had a plan, this piece of legislation, this court case we're going to make, et cetera, et cetera. I think that there has to be a reckoning. I agree with that. But I also think there has to be some positive vision and plan that you can move people toward. I mean, once you say, you know, this country has still not recovered from its original sin, which is true. Once you say that, then the next question by people who are on the sidelines, which is the vast majority of Americans, the next question is, well, so what do you want me to do about it? What am I supposed to do about it? That's what I'm trying to put together in a way that I can explain it and I can sell it. Because in politics, if you can't explain it and you can't sell it, it stays on the shelf.
I stand here in your space, and I say this as respectfully as I can, but if you don't tell black people what we need to do, then we won't tell you all what you need to do.
Well, I'm not telling you, I'm just telling you to tell me.
What I mean to say is that this is and has always been a wet problem of violence. It's not, there's not much that we can do to stop the violence against us.
Well, if that is
a conversation that push
okay,
back.
I understand what you're saying.
Also respectfully.
Yeah. Well, respectfully, if that is your position, then I will talk only to white people about how we are going to deal with the very real problems.
That's not what I mean. That's not what I mean.
Well,
but like what I'm saying is, what you just said was a form of victim blaming, right? You were saying that what the Black Lives Matter movement needs to do to change white hearts is
no, I'm not talking about. Look, I don't believe you change hearts. I believe you change laws, you change allocation of resources, you change the way systems operate. You're not going to change every heart. You're not.
I mean, if we're honest, for a lot of well-meaning, open-minded white people, the sight of a young black man in a hoodie still evokes a twinge of fear. Not just gangs of kids anymore. They are often the kinds of kids that are called super predators. No conscience, no empathy. We can talk about why they ended up that way, but first we have to bring them to heel.
Common sense gun reform, criminal justice reform, and all the like. So I think we've got somebody saying here, we have to bring them
apologize for mass incarceration.
Okay, we'll talk about it.
I'm not a super predator, Hillary Clinton.
Okay, fine, we'll talk about it.
You apologize to black people for mass incarceration?
Well, can I talk, and then maybe you can listen to what I say? Okay, fine. Thank you very much. There's a lot of issues in this campaign. The very first speech that I gave back in April was about criminal justice reform and about
predators.
You're being rude. It's not appropriate. This is not appropriate.
That's rude.
Yeah, you want to hear the facts, you just want to talk.
I know that you called black people super predators in 1994. Please explain the record. Explain it to us. You owe black people an apology.
Excuse us. That's an inappropriate
statement. If you will give me a chance to talk, I'll approach your side. You know what? Nobody's ever asked me before. You're the first person to ask me, and I'm happy to address it, but you are the first person to ask me here. Okay, back to the issues.
Not just gangs of kids anymore. They are often the kinds of kids that are called super predators. No conscience, no empathy. We can talk about why they ended up that way, but first we have to bring them to heel.
In 1994, Bill Clinton wanted to pass a crime legislation, and it was 3 strikes bill. So if you have 3 felonies, you get a life sentence. Hillary Clinton was the first lady and aggressively lobbied for it. Very rarely was the term super predator ever used in reference to white kids. Perhaps sometimes in reference to the Columbine kids, but almost always when talking about black kids in inner cities who are in gangs. So I'm giving you the full context. It wasn't just that she was talking about super predators, and it wasn't just regular old kids walking down the street. But was it racially used, that term? Yes, it most certainly was. It was used over and over by Republicans, adopted by the Clintons to scare everybody. Oh, watch out for the super predators. Is that quote accurate? Hell yes, it's accurate. I remember when we first ran the story based on a story by Michelle Alexander, who was one of the leading African-American scholars in this country. People couldn't believe the quote. And by the way, let's be clear. Columbine, of course, happened after '94. So when they were talking about this, it was almost completely used for African-American kids. If you think this is the family that was so great to African Americans,
I've been reading this book, The New Jim Crow, and it's got some gnarly stuff about Hillary Clinton. It says when her husband was president, she lobbied Congress to increase the drug war and mass incarceration.
And the best-selling author of the book, civil rights lawyer Michelle Alexander, says Bill Clinton's tough-on-crime policies resulted in the largest increase in federal and state prison inmates of any president in American history. But Clinton was not satisfied with exploding prison populations. He and the New Democrats championed legislation banning drug felons from public housing and denying them basic public benefits, including food stamps for life. Discrimination in virtually every aspect of political, economic, and social life is now perfectly legal if you've been labeled a felon. What do you think about that, 1994 Hillary Clinton?
It's a very well thought out crime bill that is both smart and tough.
1 out of 3 African American men may well end up going to prison. That's the statistic. I want people here to think what we would be doing if it was 1 out of 3 white men.
It's a very well thought out crime bill that is both smart and tough.
I said tonight that part of the blame should have been in terms of incarceration on the 1994 Clinton crime bill. A very cheap shot was thrown to me by a PhD who said that's sexist. I said absolutely it's not. If you're going to name a policy that you didn't like about Bush and you're going to put his name on it, you must put Clinton's policy, his name on that policy. Clinton knew what he was doing. He did it anyway. Sanders was one of the only people who stood on the floor at that time and said this is going to disproportionately affect black people. If you are familiar with this book or you're familiar with that 1994 crime bill, which sent many of my friends away, she is not the candidate you should be voting for.
Almost 25% of the world's total prison population. This bill would have put more police on the street, would have locked up violent offenders so they never could get out again, would have given more prison construction money.
And soon, Democrats began competing with Republicans to prove they could be even tougher on them.
And so it was President Bill Clinton who escalated the drug war far beyond what his Republican predecessors even dreamed possible. And it was President Clinton that championed laws denying federal financial aid to drug offenders for college. It was President Clinton who championed laws banning people with criminal convictions from access to public housing so that people wouldn't have housing upon release from prison. It was the Clinton administration that championed laws denying even food stamps under federal law to people who were once caught with drugs. To a large extent, the basic architecture of this new caste system was championed by a Democratic administration desperate to win back the so-called white swing voters, the folks who had defected from the Democratic Party in the wake of the civil rights movement.
Not just gangs of kids anymore. They are often the kinds of kids that are called super predators. No conscience, no empathy. We can talk about why they ended up that way, but first we have to bring them to heel. 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 Bring them to heel.
The woman who was standing beside Bill Clinton when he signed the Welfare Act admitted before she died that it was the wrong move, that working didn't help her. She worked at a job where she made a little bit of money, and Even if after she made a little bit of money, she still couldn't afford her medicine. Clinton used her, just like he used black people, just like Hillary Clinton is using black people now. I'm kind of tired of being used.
By the time Bill and I left the White House, welfare rolls had dropped 60%.
This was a blunderbuss. This was just an axe, a hatchet. 6 million, 2% of our population have no income except those food stamps. The food stamps is the sole thing that stands between them and being totally without any income.
I want to talk about this story that CNN.com put out dealing with the recession worsens racial wealth gap. Whites have a net worth about 20 times that of blacks and about 18 times that of Hispanics. Who's to blame for this?
He was very close to Robert Rubin, to Lawrence Summers, to the people in the Clinton administration.
This duo has gutted and devastated the black community. You can draw a line from the evaporation of black wealth in the black community back to the deregulation of the Clinton years. I would be hard pressed to find in recent memory another president who's been quite as damaging.
The same Confederate flag Bree Newsom took down from above the South Carolina State House represents the exact same slave-owning and traitorous Confederacy for which Bill Clinton signed a resolution stating that the highest star on the Arkansas flag represented. To this day, they still have an official Confederate Flag Day. And not only did Bill and Hillary never say anything about this, but for 12 years, they celebrated the Confederacy too. I wouldn't want to talk about my past either.
Perhaps the most important wreckage to take a look at is really the wreckage of the Democratic Party.
We cannot keep imprisoning more people than anybody else in the world.
Does no one else see the hypocrisy? Forget about super predators in the 1994 crime bill. When Hillary Clinton said this, she was actively using lobbyists from 2 major private prison companies to raise campaign cash. And she only stopped taking money from associates of the GEO Group and Corrections Corporations of America after Black Lives Matter and other activists confronted her. But even now, she has campaign staffers that lobby directly for GEO Group on her payroll.
Do you still have the support of Hillary Clinton?
I still support her, and that question of whether I continue to have her support is up to her, but I feel pretty confident I do.
You cannot call yourself an ally if you are going to stand behind a mayor of a city who actively participated in the suppression of a dash cam video showing an execution by a Chicago police officer of a young black man.
For those of you who have not yet made up your minds, or maybe even some of you who have made up your minds, to maybe consider and reconsider what it is that Bernie Sanders offers. He offers us a chance to declare unequivocally that there is an America, that there is a group of citizens with a deep caring for where our nation goes and what it does in the process of going.
Yesterday, Hillary Clinton proposed changing marijuana from a Schedule I to a Schedule II narcotic so researchers could do more study on the impact of medical marijuana. You've been outspoken about the need for the federal government to kind of back off applying federal law on marijuana. What's your take on her move?
I think she's recognizing public sentiment. I've been here for my entire career wanting to reform criminal justice. During the Clinton era, the drug laws that Bill Clinton and some Republicans voted for have locked up a generation of young black men in our country. The drug war has disproportionately, not purposely, but disproportionately been applied to African Americans, Hispanics, and people who live in poverty. And so Clinton is now coming around, but she has to explain why she and her husband supported many of these mandatory minimums where people went to jail for 15 years.
Time and time again, you hear one thing in speeches, and then you see a campaign that has the worst kind of tactics, reminiscent of the same sort of Republican attacks on Democrats. Well, I am here to say that it is not only wrong, but it is undermining core democratic principles. Since when do Democrats attack one another on universal health care?
I've looked at the legislation that Senator Sanders has proposed, and basically he does eliminate the Affordable Care Act, eliminates private insurance, eliminates Medicare, eliminates Medicaid, TRICARE, Children's Health Insurance Program.
Just because Senator Obama chose not to present a universal health care plan does not give him the right to attack me because I did. So let's have a real campaign. Enough with the speeches and the big rallies and then using tactics that are right out of Karl Rove's playbook.
This is wrong, and every Democrat should be outraged. The Democratic Party in the United States worked since Harry Truman to get the Affordable Care Act passed. So shame on you, Barack Obama. It is time you ran a campaign consistent with your messages in public.
I have a lifetime of experience that I will bring to the White House. I know Senator McCain has a lifetime of experience that he will bring to the White House. And Senator Obama has a speech he gave in 2002.
We just had the tape. You just said that I complimented the Republican ideas. That is not true. What I said is that Ronald Reagan was a transformative political figure because he was able to get Democrats to vote against their economic interests to form a majority to push through their agenda, an agenda that I objected to because while I was working on those streets, watching those folks see their jobs shipped overseas, you were a corporate lawyer sitting on the board of Walmart.
The persistent scourge of child labor.
I'm always proud of Walmart and what we do.
Clinton also took a role in supporting a Buy America program.
One of the reasons we want to buy America is because we love America.
Walmart continued to get most of its products from overseas during its Buy America program, including from this factory in Bangladesh that used 11 and 12-year-old girls.
The persistent scourge of child labor.
New York has spent a considerable amount of money and effort devising very good tests.
I will end the unfunded mandate known as No Child Left Behind. I do not believe that our children are little test takers. And I do not believe that our teachers should be nothing but test givers.
When you narrow the curriculum and you focus just on those tests, you really demoralize teachers.
Today is the 12th of January 2016, 6 years after the earthquake. And for us, it was important to be in front of the Clinton Foundation because Bill Clinton, as head of the interim Haiti Recovery Commission, was responsible for the $6 billion. He had unlimited control of this money. 6 years after the earthquake, Haiti is in worse condition than it was in 2010. Only Bill Clinton can tell the world what happened with this money.
Hillary Clinton's attempt to tout her foreign policy experience hounded her again on the campaign trail today.
I made a mistake in describing it.
She claimed she misspoke last week and was sleep deprived when she described landing under sniper fire in Tuzla, Bosnia, something that didn't happen. But CBS News has found several times in the past few months when Senator Clinton used the Bosnia trip to try to show her international experience. December in Iowa.
We landed in one of those corkscrew landings and ran out because they said there might be sniper fire. I don't remember anybody offering me tea on the tarmac when that was happening.
Then in February,
the welcoming ceremony had to be moved inside because of sniper fire.
And last week.
I remember landing under sniper fire. We basically were told to run to our cars. Now that is what happened.
I know you recall, ducking under sniper fire, and Sinbad in his account, who's on the trip, he said that the most dangerous part was remembering where he was going to eat next.
He's a comedian, Jeff. He's a comedian.
So you actually recall, hearing gunfire, and were you
when we were flying into Bosnia, we came in a evasive maneuver. There was no greeting ceremony. And we basically were told to run to our cars. Now that is what happened.
After CBS News video showed what really happened when she landed and greeted officials, Senator Clinton maintained there were risks, but explained to the Philadelphia Daily News why she was seen on the Bosnian tarmac greeting a young child if it was really so dangerous.
I was also told that the greeting ceremony had been moved away from the tarmac, but that there was this 8-year-old girl, and I said, well, I can't rush by her. I've got to at least greet her. So I greeted her, I took her stuff, and I left. Now that's my memory of it.
Good to see you.
Once again, her memory doesn't match our videotape. She and her daughter Chelsea lingered on the tarmac to greet U.S. military officials. Took photos. There was the group of 7th graders on the tarmac too. And then Senator Clinton walked to the armored vehicle where she did eventually duck and enter.
I remember landing under sniper.
No, wait, that's what I said when I was sleep deprived. You can read my book, and I said something very different. Yeah, I misspoke. Yeah, I totally misspoke. I've talked about this endlessly. I wrote about it, and I don't know what I was thinking because, yeah, we were told that we had to land under, some threats, and but
that was just sleep deprivation or something.
Yeah.
I have been often to, I guess, the mothership in New York City. But it's good to have an outpost of the council right here down the street from the State Department. We get a lot of advice from the council, so this will mean I won't have as far to go to be told what we should be doing and how we should think about the future. I mean, Richard just gave what could be described as a mini version of my remarks in talking about the issues that confront us. But I look out at this audience filled with not only many friends and colleagues, but people who have served in prior administrations. And so there is never a time when the inbox is not full.
I'm Hillary Clinton. I have been proud and privileged to serve as First Lady, as a senator from New York, and as Secretary of State. I'm the granddaughter of a factory worker and the grandmother of a wonderful one-year-old child. And every day I think about what we need to do to make sure that opportunity is available, not just for her, but for all of our children. I have spent a very long time, my entire adult life, looking for ways to even the odds to help people have a chance to get ahead. And in particular, to find the ways for each child to live up to his or her God-given potential.
It's absurd to suggest she's a friend of children who are in need or families. This is a woman who, when her husband was governor, I first met her at that time when I went down to interview him for the Los Angeles Times, and he was starting his presidential run. And they were bragging about their welfare reform, which destroyed what existed of support for poor children in Arkansas. Then as president, her husband, with her full-throated approval, destroyed the aid to families with dependent children, which 70% of the people on that program were children. It was the major federal program to help poor people and poor families. And in the cynicism of the Clinton administration, they destroyed that program, and we don't even have an accounting of poor children anymore. They're all off the radar. So that's just utter nonsense. And then her husband, after all, and she again was a full-throated support. She was very close to Robert Rubin, to Lawrence Summers, to the people in the Clinton administration who gave us the radical deregulation of Wall Street, which caused incredible misery in the Great Recession. The Clinton signing on the collateralized debt obligation law, which allowed all that junk to be legal. The Commodity Futures Modernization Act, the Financial Service Modernization Act, the Reverse Glass-Steagall. So they're the ones that opened the door to the Wall Street thieves that brought on the Great Recession. And then as senator, she's carried water for Wall Street faithfully. And then finally, if we're going to run for somebody who has experience as Secretary of State, I'd rather support John Kerry. After all, it's been a great relief to see Kerry as opposed to Hillary Clinton. We finally have some rational foreign policy and peacemaking with Iran, with Cuba. Where was Hillary Clinton? And let me say, one reason I could never vote for Hillary Clinton is that her attack on Edward Snowden, her attack on the whistleblowers, to call them traitors, to talk about these people. And here is a woman who knew what the government was doing and spying on the American people. She didn't tell us. She didn't trust the State Department with her email, but she never told us that the State Department, the CIA, and the NSA were spying on the emails of all the Americans. No, but she thinks that's fine. She's just going to keep her email in her garage, So I find her to be a center of cynicism and opportunism and really quite reckless.
He asked, if indicted, would she drop out of the race? Listen to her response.
I think that what we've got here is a case of overclassification.
But if we'll give you permission.
I am not concerned about it. I am not worried about it. And no Democrat or American should be either.
The questions were, Secretary Clinton, the questions were, who gave you permission to operate? Was it President Obama?
There was no permission to be asked. It had been done by my predecessors. It was permitted. I didn't have to ask anyone.
If you get indicted, would you drop out?
Oh, for goodness, that is not going to happen. I'm not even answering that question.
Right, the audience was cheering, were they not? Let's see if Judge Andrew Napolitano is cheering along with the audience there.
Well, I'm sorry that she gave answers like that.
because she knows that if she's indicted, she will be forced to drop out. And she knows that there's a substantial legal case being built against her by the FBI, which was listening to what she said last night. And she knows that the FBI will call her in and say, Mrs. Clinton, here's the evidence we have. Shall we present it to a grand jury, or do you want to work with us about it? And that's a Hobson's choice that she really doesn't ever want to make. The law will not force her. But the fact that an indicted human being out on bail and subject to the court, subject to the summons of the court on a moment's notice, is on a national political ticket, I think would cause even the Democrats to reconsider the wisdom of this.
Why would she be out on bail? You'd have to arrest her and charge her to do that.
She technically would be arrested, technically, at the time she appeared in court to plead not guilty.
That bad?
Yes, that bad. That bad. A mugshot and fingerprints.
She was asked, Jorge Ramos specifically went right there and he said, look, if indicted, are you going to drop out? And she said, oh, that's ridiculous. I'm not even going to answer the question.
I think when she says things like that, accompanied by what she said earlier, I neither sent nor received anything marked classified, when we all know that nothing is marked classified, it's a dog whistle to the FBI. It says to the FBI, her natural inclination is to lie. That question should be asked of Mrs. Clinton in every single remaining debate.
What, the question being, if indicted, will you drop out?
Yes.
That's the question?
Yes, that's the question.
But she's going to always respond in the same way.
The more she responds in that way, the less credibility she'll have.
Judge, the guy gets immunity. There is a grand jury, has been empaneled and is hearing evidence. Surely Hillary should be really worried about this.
Hillary should be terrified, and I'll tell you why. Our colleagues Catherine Herridge and Pamela Brown have a piece coming up on FoxNews.com as we speak, explaining what the Justice Department lawyers will ask Mr. Pagliano to explain to the grand jury. How he was able to migrate a State Department secure system onto her private server. Question, Mr. Pagliano, did Mrs. Clinton give you her personal Secretary of State password to enable you to do that? If he answers yes, we have an indictment for misconduct in office as well as espionage. She should be terrified of the fact that he's been granted immunity. We also know they're going to seek someone's indictment because they would not be immunizing him and thereby inducing him to spill his guts unless they wanted to indict someone. Now, we don't know who it is. There's 4 or 5 people between Brian Pagliano and Mrs. Clinton.
This is from Hillary Clinton's press secretary. It goes on to say, she has encouraged everyone to cooperate, talking about Hillary Clinton, because we want to make every good faith effort to be transparent and answer any questions that people have. Goes on to say, with Mr. Pagliano, we encouraged him as well, because we don't think he has any reason to not be transparent.
They are out of their minds. That is a response written by their political people and not by their legal people. Mr. Pagliano is their nightmare.
Mrs. Clinton, our investigation is completed. Would you like to come in and be interviewed by us? No lawyer whose client has been investigated for a white-collar crime would ever say yes to that question without knowing what the feds know, and the feds won't tell the lawyer what they know. On the other hand, Mrs. Clinton is running for president of the United States. If she refuses to go in for that interview, her opponents will have a field day. Wait a minute, you say you're innocent, you don't want to tell the FBI? Either way, she loses. Anybody who thinks that this will go away because they hope it will go away or they want to wish it away is living in a dreamland. This is a serious investigation by serious people who don't give a whip, to quote the director of the FBI, about politics.
So you said at a March press conference in 2015, quote, I did not email any classified material.
Here's what happens. The State Department has a process for determining what is or isn't classified. If they determine it is, they mark it as classified.
Well, who decides?
The State Department decides.
But what about you when you're typing an email?
No, the State Department decides.
Your contention now is the 2,101 emails contained information that should be classified at any time. That should be now or then. You're just saying it shouldn't have been classified.
Well, what I'm saying is it wasn't at the time.
She forgets who her audience is. Her audience is 100 FBI agents in the Justice Department investigating her, and they know she is lying when she answers the question to Bret Baier. When she says for the umpteenth time, I neither sent nor received anything marked classified. Nothing is marked classified. The markings are confidential, secret, or top secret. So while the statement is technically correct, I never sent nor received anything marked classified, it is highly misleading. It is materially misleading. Second point, on her first day in office, she received a 2-hour tutorial from 2 FBI agents explaining to her what makes an email confidential, secret, or top secret is not a stamp or a marking on it. It's the contents of it. And you, as the Secretary of State, as the country's chief diplomat, have a legal obligation to recognize state secrets when you see them. There were state secrets on 2,000 emails. I didn't know they were state secrets until the State Department told me they were. That's called gross negligence. That's a basis for a criminal prosecution for the failure to secure state secrets.
They appear to be an explanation of how this whole thing is just blown out of all proportion. And I suspect many, many people will accept that on face value. I think she might have won politically.
And that'll be useless to her when she's confronted with the following. Mrs. Clinton, this is the Justice Department calling. We have a lot of evidence about your behavior we'd like to discuss with you and your lawyers. I don't want to see you. Okay, we'll discuss it with a grand jury.
That's what's going to happen?
She will have the Hobson's choice of talking to the FBI or not talking. If she does talk, they will leak it. And she will be the first person running for president of the United States who was compelled to justify her behavior to the FBI. If she doesn't talk, they'll go to a grand jury and they'll leak it. This was all done because she wanted to stop transparency. She wanted to keep her behavior from the rest of the State Department and from us under the Freedom of Information Act.
She should have just said, this is why I did it.
Yes. Yeah. She's already said many, many times, quote, I can't wait to speak to the FBI. Now, when she says that, that's a lie. The FBI knows it's a lie. Yeah, nobody can't wait to speak to the FBI when you have a potential criminal defendant and you don't know what they have.
But she could say, look, her lawyer could say, look, I don't want my client to, hurt her chances or implicate her, so we're just going to have to say no.
If she says no, that is the prudent legal advice.
That's right.
But politically, it would be catastrophic for her. She could be prosecuted whether she intentionally exposed them or negligently exposed them, and how she had the affirmative legal duty to recognize a secret when she saw one.
And Pagliano was just a private guy, or he worked for the State Department, or what?
He worked for her campaign. He worked for her presidential campaign. He worked for her senatorial campaign. He worked for the Clinton Foundation, and then he worked for the State Department.
Australia managed to get away or take away tens of thousands, millions of handguns. And in 1 year, they're all gone. Can we do that? And why, if we can't, why can't we?
You know, Australia is a good example. Canada is a good example. The UK is a good example. Why? Because each of them had mass killings. So I think that's worth considering. I don't know enough details to tell you how we would do it or how it would work, but certainly the Australian example is worth looking at.
We cannot let a minority of people, and that's what it is a minority of people, hold a viewpoint that terrorizes the majority of people.
So Alice is going to be playing Candidates Cribs with us, and you are going to try and guess which candidate has lived in which mansion. First up, we've got what I'm calling the Embassy Estate. Who do you guys think of these candidates has lived in the Embassy Estate?
Let's go with Marco Rubio.
Marco Rubio. I like the way you say Rubio. Say it again.
Rubio.
I'll go with Ben Carson.
Dr. Ben Carson has lived in the Embassy Estate. That's what we're going with. All right. Next up, the Countryside Castle. Who you got?
I'll go with Jeb Bush.
Jeb Bush, making bank. The Hampton Hideaway, a cool $11 million. So who do you think is able to afford that?
Mark Rubio.
Senator Marco Rubio from Florida.
Ben Carson.
Ben Carson. All right, he's making that neurosurgeon money. Last, but certainly not least, is the Beachside Bungalow.
Donald Trump.
No doubt that you think Donald's the one that can afford that?
Yep. Yes.
For the Beachside Bungalow, who do we think lives in the Beachside Bungalow?
I'm going to say Marco.
What if I told you that all four of these were Hillary Clinton?
What?
What? Really? Oh no, you're pulling my leg.
No way. Are you serious?
Oh, wow. Are you serious? Are they really? Damn, then she does have that kind of money.
All right, well now,
you're changing my opinion on the election a little bit.
I'm very surprised. I did not know Hillary Clinton had that much money at all.
You know, I have a long agenda because I think that's what voters expect. I want them to know what I will do as president, and I want them to hold me accountable. So I'm going to keep talking about what voters talk to me about, and I don't want to overpromise. I would rather, just lay it out there and deliver, which is what I've done throughout my career.
There must be consequences. Let's see if I get some water here. You do talk a lot in this campaign.
We're going to do the best we can to level with people, and then we're going to let them make up their minds, because I think if the American people get a chance, and if they're trusted to exercise their vote right, because people talk to them about real issues, this country will be okay.
This campaign stands for what is best in America. And we have to be united.
New sanctions in response.
Join me. Let's go win the nomination. Thank you all, and God bless you.
So please say yes.